Today, I wanted to talk about the cereal aisle. Well, talk about the cereal aisle as a segue to bigger things, but bear with me. So, last summer, when I'm back in LA, I'm going to the supermarket to get some groceries, going to be there for a little bit. I'm in this supermarket aisle that is just ceiling to floor of cereals that are uplit like you would light a corpse in a film. There's like 11 different types of Cheerios. There's Reese's Puffs, which are like these little peanut butter filled chocolate cereals made for children for breakfast. And while looking at all of this, I just started thinking, like, who is this for? What is this for? This makes no sense. And somewhere between being there and being back in my flat in London, I feel like I stopped being American, at least in a way that I recognized. I knew when I was back standing in that aisle looking at all those cereals, I just couldn't unsee what seemed so abnormal to me now. So today I guess we're going to talk about reverse culture shock, I think is the best way to describe it. It's strange and it's quiet, but it's surprisingly emotional at times. It's finding a new home and that your own home doesn't quite feel the same. You know, when you get to the airport, it no longer feels like you're back in someplace familiar. The the food doesn't feel the same or taste the same. And the small talk just kind of doesn't land the same anymore. And you just kind of can't stop noticing the shape of things have changed fundamentally, or the way that you see these things. I think the moment you land, when I got back there, I land in LAX, Los Angeles International Airport. It's huge, it's bright, it's very freaking loud. There's stores everywhere. There's the smell of perfume, the duty free, the the floors are so polished. They reflect back at you. It feels more like you're in a mall than in an airport, but everything there is saying you're here. Also, the amount of TVs that are on with the news, like so many TVs, and they're all just yelling at you. There is no silence in these airports. But then when I flew back here and I'm at Heathrow, the British airport is generally pretty quiet in comparison. Not overly lit with unnecessary energy wasting lights, and there's absolutely no TVs on the news yelling at you. There's just a gurgled announcement that you can't quite make out that's pretty softly spoken. And I want to tell you the truth about airports in the States. They just freaking stink. There's like I said, it's like a mall. You have all these food courts, you have all these stores trying to sell you these perfumes and spring samples. It's also kind of like the faint smell of corn syrup is there too, because you know how we love making things sweet in America. After being in London for almost a year at that point, I stood at baggage claim in LAX and all this noise and all this light, and I felt for the first time that I was in a place that felt really foreign. And not foreign in the way of like going to France and, the menus in a different language and you don't quite understand everything that way, but foreign in a deeper way. Um, Foreign in a way that says I do not anymore know that I'm from here. I think that would be the best way to describe reverse culture shock. It's not loud and it's not dramatic. It's like feeling a place that you once belonged has somehow changed. Or possibly it's you that's changed. When you leave LAX, there's not really like great public transport to be able to get out of there. So you got to call an Uber. The car shows up. The car's always huge. All the cars are huge and not huge like a lorry truck, like just cavernous. You get in the back seat. You can hear an echo, essentially. The cars are just different, you know? There's a lot of space between you and everyone in it. And I think that's also very similar to America. There's just a lot of space between you and everyone in it. And driving down the highway or riding down the highway, I suppose, in this situation, you see the actual trucks and not what we call semi trucks, but just regular pickup trucks that are just so huge. And then all the billboards and all the lanes. And then you see strip mall after strip mall. And then you see signs that say, eat here, sleep here, refinance here, save the soul of your unborn child here, get a divorce here, buy a mattress for $99 over here, all in this freaking strip mall. The roads in America are always selling you something every 6 seconds, even when you're just a passenger. And the strip malls are endless off these freeways. The chain restaurants, TGI Fridays, Chili's, then we have our CVS, which is not like a pharmacy here at all. It is a one-stop shop. There is multiple nail salons. There's always a gun shop. And there's always somehow a Wendy's that seems to be open. And this used to seem really normal to me when I would be taking long road trips or even just driving through town on the freeway. Like this is what you're used to. But this time when I looked at this strip mall and this Wendy's from the window, I just thought this is not a real place. This is just a marketing event. Everything is a marketing event in America. Then after being on the highway, you get home. You get to the house you're staying at. And the house, just like the car, is enormous, bigger than you remember for absolutely no reason. Here, my fridge is in the cabinet, tea kettles on the side. The doors are all closed. And by now, I'm getting much better about making sure all the appliances are off. But in America, your kitchen is the size of a ballroom. There's a giant island in the middle that's probably bigger than my bathroom here. And it's somehow there's also like always the microwave with the other microwave. And sometimes you have double ovens. Um, the ceilings are tall. The, the, everything is just on and large and made for entertaining. The TV's on. The air conditioning is constantly on because, like, it might still be humid in November. And then, like, this small voice starts to talk to you after being here. And after being in London, I started asking, were the doors open? Are you letting the heat out? Nobody hears. So I just close it. Nobody really notices that I closed the door, I think. But somehow there's seven more doors to seven more rooms. I think in a house in America, it's not built for a single person. It is also built for entertaining. It's built for you to be the marketing material now. When someone comes into your home, it is expansive like a conference center. My British life is not expansive. My British life fits in a hallway. I also know which one I now prefer. Had I known this without leaving, I don't know how I would have felt about it. But after being there, then you sit down and you're like, well, it's time to eat. And I don't want to shit on American food too much, It is nostalgic. A part of me will always love it. The mac and cheese, the bread made out of pure sugar, um, the pies, which are different than the pies here, pumpkin, blueberry, pecan, sweet. We do love our sugar. Um, but the food is bland now in a different way. And then even when you go out to eat, you know, remember going out to eat just like at a simple diner thing for lunch, like not a big dinner ordeal. And I just ordered what what I thought was a salad for one person, but of course it's the size of like probably 5 heads of iceberg lettuce at this point. And then my friend ordered a sampler platter that looks more like a buffet. I guess the sampling is like all of the buffet, sampling every item on the menu. I'm not really sure. But you just end up with all this extra food that also, is not as tasty as food here because of the quality. And it just seems like a waste. And you always need like to take half of it home. So you're always asking for what we call a to-go box. Um, but yeah, you end up taking that to-go box. But in Britain, the meal you order is like a normal portion size a person is able to eat. So there's really not many people taking to-go boxes. America fills your plate to market the food to you, even though it's more like a picture. It's not necessarily like quality of food. The salad dressing's sweet, the bread is sweet, the tomato sauce is sweet. Everything is somehow sweet when you go out to eat and when you go to the grocery store. Everything is kind of like cake in a way, which probably explains a lot of our health issues. Mm. But I grew up with all this, this was very normal. This is what all Americans grow up with. These are normal things to us. But after a year, it tastes more like a warning, if that makes sense. A warning for my health. And then I guess another thing that I've adjusted to here is the pharmacy. And we don't call it a chemist, it's the pharmacy. We have big chains like CVS, they sell everything like a corner store sells, but they are called a pharmacy somehow. And when you go in there to get something simple like a paracetamol, which is Tylenol in the States, you might be paying $14 for a bottle of 50, which here you're limited to how many you can even buy, and it's like 40p to get it, 40 pence, right? Make sure I'm saying that correctly. Either way, it's not something you really have to budget for. And you will see people in the States at CVS and stuff like this because you can't just buy a small thing of a couple of paracetamols or Advil. You have to buy in bulk. Everything, it has to be bought in bulk, essentially, even at the pharmacy. Also, oftentimes at these CVSs and pharmacies, you will hear people at the till or the cash register for my Americans, um, looking at the items they're getting that are medically needed and deciding which ones they can afford because of the cost of these things. You can get so much more over the counter than you can here for sure, but also that leaves completely like out of regulation of price for medical things. So you're going to be paying a premium price for plasters and rubbing alcohol or peroxide or antibiotic ointment, all these things that here I'm just so surprised to see at the store and how cheap and affordable they are. Where like once I moved, it was very easy to like rebuild my first aid kit, which I always think is a very smart thing to have. You should always have a little backup first aid kit. But after living here for a while, like that seems incredibly abnormal. Um, the cost of things at the pharmacy, or that the pharmacy looks like also the house, the airport, everything. It's a conference center and it's a huge marketing thing. And then also when you're at the till or anything in America, we love our small talk. Small talk is something we're pretty good at. It's kind of like it's a sport that everyone plays individually and as a team, I think. You you as an American, you do small talk because you are genuinely curious. I think we're pretty friendly if you start talking to us. I know there's a lot of stereotypes about Americans, but I think the thing I do hear a lot from people here that when they encounter Americans in our small talk is that we're pretty nice. I know we're not in a time where we're known as very nice, and that is fair. There's a lot of people who are very not nice. But one on one, if you come to America and you were to visit someone and you run into them, you could easily end up at a barbecue at their house by the end of the night by just some small talk at the supermarket. But also, sometimes it does feel disingenuous, and not having small talk here as so much of a thing, it's been really interesting to adjust because I'm not sure when to shut up. I am someone who likes to talk all the time, and I would learning to appreciate those silent moments is something that's become new to me. And that there's not tension by having silent moments. In the States, the small talk is such a big filler because a moment of 10 to 30 seconds of silence in a conversation can be misunderstood as the thing going awkward or not, not a good time. So that's like the flip on that one. I think the jury's still out on how I feel about that completely. I like some, I don't like some. Um, Here, I think nobody just randomly asks how you are on the street. In the States, you would talk to every stranger that walks by. But I think that's also due to we're not really walking on the streets a lot. People in New York aren't doing this because there's a lot of people walking on the streets. And if everyone was talking to strangers, nobody would get where they're going to get to, which I think plays into here because everyone is also typically pedestrians walking around. So they're not talking to everyone. Where most places in the States, you're in your car. So you're clearly not getting to talk to people you get to pass by. You might just wave to them from your car. But I'd also noticed after living here for a while, the difference in the way community feels, for sure. There's a completely different thing. And it's not really in the cereal aisle. It's not really at the diner when you're getting a salad. It's not at the paracetamol at the CVS, or it's not even the small talk. It's the things that you can see, things that you feel like it's something else. The thing you feel after you've lived in Britain for a little while now, and you decide that as a whole, everybody belongs here. People aren't segregating so much. I'm not saying like you guys are hippies or in like a super soft way, but I think in a structural way. And I think probably something to do with living through World War One and World War Two together. That the binding thing between all of you is that you're in it together. I think your approach to healthcare says that, your approach to housing says that. Whereas America, like you are radically an individual and you are picking up your bootstraps. So that sense of community is just not the same. And even though I'm from a small town, everybody knows each other, everyone like cares, it still isn't the same, if that makes sense. It's very hard to describe these small cultural differences in two places that both speak English. And then when it comes to Kentucky, both look very similar geographically with the rolling green hills and small villages and small towns. But there's just like everyone is each other's safety net here. Whereas in a small town, people might ask how you're doing and care that you're doing okay or well. Um, but they're not really going to be able to help you in the way that everyone can help each other here. The healthcare, the housing, all those things completely different, which even in a tight knit community kind of segregates the community to an extent. Um, Also, while I was there, I did see my cousin, and my cousin was telling me about a tooth that's been bothering him for a while. And I think this is incredibly ironic because he works at a hospital and he has insurance. Yet he has not gone to get this tooth checked on because it will be hundreds of dollars because his insurance doesn't offer dental. And I say hundreds of dollars as like hopefully only a couple $100s or more. And I've never understood the stereotype. Now that I live here, it's like the NHS has dental, and I know there's long waits. I know there's complaints about that, but you can see a dentist for like 25 pounds. Whereas in the States, dental is not usually part of your healthcare plan. That is a separate thing. Not all jobs offer it, and it is very expensive to do. Usually, dental in the States is an out of pocket expenditure for most people. And the fact that my cousin can be working at a hospital and still have very lackluster insurance. And he's young, he's in his early 20s. I know he's going to just ignore the tooth until the point he can't ignore it anymore. And he'll have to go in and do something about it. And by then, he might have to have the tooth pulled, and it definitely would be far more expensive than if he was able to just go now. But there is no $25 cap on that situation. There will just be a several $1,000 cap physically on that tooth in a few years. And all while working at a hospital. But I think after being there, what a lot of Americans don't want you to say, they don't want to be outed for this. But after you've lived somewhere else for a long time, somewhere that treats basic life and healthcare and housing and time off and dignity as an everyday expectation in life, you can't really unsee that stuff. That logic feels familiar, and the older version just feels extremely illogical and unnecessary and busy and loud and just so much marketing, so much advertising everywhere. The medical advertisings, all of it. But now I'm here and it feels like home. Here feels like home. America doesn't feel like home. People ask me, of course, people always ask you when you're not from a country and you're living there if you'll ever move back. Do you ever think about moving back? Do you want to move back? And I always pause before I answer because the honest answer is so much more complicated than a yes or a no. Um, I love the idea of America. I obviously love my friends and family in America. I do love the diners. Mandy and I talked about the diners forever. I love music in America. I love bluegrass, what Kentucky is known for. I love that I don't feel like I know any strangers there. I love how expansive the outdoor space is. I love how sure of itself it can be at times. Sure, I do love some parts of it. But I don't think I can live there anymore because after living here, no matter how damp it is, or how gray it is, or how rainy it might be, or how annoying my tiny fridge can be at times, although I don't really need it to be big because my food doesn't last for months on end. It actually has an expiration date, and that is actually to be followed as I learned being here. But I can't go back. This is my home now. This feels like somehow where I was always meant to be. When I came back from LAX and landed in Heathrow, the agents aren't smiling at the desk. They're not giving you these fake little small talk smiles or anything. They're not even looking at you, really. I just came back and was allowed to just integrate right back in like nothing had happened. I'm waiting outside. I'm calling an Uber because I got, giant bags after coming back for a while. And I just felt like, even though it was a little cold and a little rainy and it's misting, like my shoulders just relaxed. The weight, the fear, the uncertainty, the confusion, the busyness of America had just gone, just fell off my shoulders. I think if you've ever lived abroad, when you go home, you might feel that same thing, depending on where you were, of course. Of course, sorry. Um, yeah, I'm home. Have you ever lived abroad? If so, where? Did you have this feeling? Did somewhere not home feel more like home than your home? Uh, Let me know in the comments below. I would really love to hear about. Is this something common that relocating to another country a lot of people go through? And of course, I got to do the obligatory like, subscribe, do the little hype thing. Um, and thanks for letting me come home. I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and leave a comment below. And as always, a special thanks to my members. And be sure to check out the Tudor Yank store live now.